also we just thought it wasn't fair.
In 1965, a group of students were suspended and sent home from school because they wore a black armband to show their views about the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War officially started in 1954, even though the conflicts that ignited the war started in the mid-1940s. The war was between nationalist forces, North Vietnam, and its communist allies seeking to unify Vietnam under a communist government and South Vietnam. The United States intervened in the war in an attempt to prevent the spread of communism. At first, the United States had the support of its citizens to be involved in the war, but as people started to believe that the United States was fighting a war that could not be won, the United States government started to lose support. More than 58,000 Americans died during the war, and over 1,700 went missing. In the eye of the public, the Vietnam War was not worth fighting if the price to pay was its people. Some people showed their resistance to the war by protesting. Senator Robert Kennedy called for the Christmas truce on December 1965. The truce called for all fire to cease in Vietnam for the holidays. Some people supported the truce, but others did not. Some of the people that supported the Christmas truce was the Tinkers and Eggharts. To show their support for the truce and sorrow for all the casualties in the war, the Tinkers, Eggharts, and several others decided to wear a black armband to school. The decision to wear black armbands was made on Saturday, December 11, 1965. The meeting took place in the Eggharts' home, and according to Christopher Egghart, the meeting lasted several hours. The meeting was made up of a group of adults and students who wanted to publicize their objection of the hostilities in Vietnam and support of the Christmas truce. This group of people had been involved in similar activities in the past. In the meeting, it was decided that they were going to wear black armbands during the holiday season and fast on December 16 and on New Year's Eve.
Well, there had been a rally in Washington, D.C. that November that my brother John had gone to, and our mother went to it, and one of our friends, Chris Eckhart, and his mother went. It was a rally against the war, and so my brother always said that he was so happy to go there because our views about the war weren't very popular, and so it was very nice for him to be around people that agreed that they were also against war. So it was on the way home that the idea for these armbands came up, because they were talking in the van about what, they could do back in Des Moines to speak up against the war. And so that's when the idea of the armbands came out. And someone said it was from a man named Herbert Hoover, who was a Quaker. He was related to the president, Herbert Hoover, but he was actually a Quaker in Des Moines. And someone said it was his idea, but there were also other students in the country that were talking about wearing armbands with these Students for Democratic Society, SDS, so maybe they heard about them. We weren't members of SDS or anything like that. We were a lot younger than the college students in that.
3 of the students who participated in the armband protests were Mary Beth Tinker, John F. Tinker, and Christopher Eckhart. All 3 students were teenagers that lived and attended schools in Des Moines, Iowa. Mary Beth Tinker was 13 years old and attended Harding Junior High at the same time of the protest. Her brother John F. Tinker was 15. Both siblings were exposed to liberal politics and raised to be aware of what was going on around the world. John described his parents as activists who were against the Vietnam War and prejudice. In November 1965, John Tinker and Christopher Eckhart participated in a protest in Washington, D.C. The protest was against the Vietnam War. It is evident that even before the armband protests, the Tinkers and Eckhart participated in protests against the Vietnam War. Christopher Eckhart was 15 years old and attended the Theodore Roosevelt High School as a sophomore. Like the Tinker children, Christopher Eckhart was exposed to liberal politics at a very young age. According to his mother, he would always attend speeches and meetings with different civil rights advocates that she required to come to Des Moines. Christopher's mother was able to bring such people to the town because she was the president of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. The school officials learned about the plan of students wearing black armbands to school. On December 14, 1965, the school officials met and discussed the armband protest. The school officials were concerned that the black armbands were going to cause disruptions in the learning environment. They decided that to prevent the disruption, they were going to enforce a new policy. The new policy forbade the students to wear black armbands. If any student who wore a black armband to school and refused to remove it would be suspended. Student rights don't end when you enter the school doors. They are applied everywhere. Both John Tinker, Christopher Eghart, and the other student were notified about the consequences of wearing an armband to school. The new school policy did not stop Mary Beth Tinker, John F. Tinker, and Christopher Eghart from wearing the armbands. Christopher Eghart was suspended by the vice principal of the school after he turned himself in for defying the rules by wearing the armband. John F. Tinker wore his armband to school on Friday, December 17, 1965, the day after Mary Beth Tinker and Christopher Eghart got sent back to home. John Tinker was technically not suspended, but he was sent back home.
Some people were very hostile to us, to our whole family, and they threw red paint at our house and said that we were communists. My mom always said, "We're not communists, we're Methodists." And then they threatened to bomb our house on Christmas Eve, and some people sent hate mail to our house and, called us traitors and things like that. But, also another woman called when I was getting ready for school in January, right around this time of year, and she said, "Is this Mary Beth Tinker?" And I said, "Yes." And then she said, "I'm going to kill you." So that was all kind of strange, and it was the first time I realized that there are these crazy, dangerous people out there.
The First Amendment states, "Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances." With that being said, the First Amendment was written because many citizens wanted their basic freedoms to have some assurance as well as protection. It protects assembly, petition, press, religion, and freedom of speech. With that, the First Amendment was the main evidence that defended the Tinkers in court as they continued to wear the black armbands, which displayed their freedom of speech rights. Unfortunately, there are still many courts that struggle with the appropriate situation to use the First Amendment. The fight to wear black armbands was taken to court on November 12, 1968, with Tinker and Eghart petitioners. These three kids were suspended and sent home after they refused to remove the armbands. They didn't return to school until after New Year's, but through their fathers they filed a complaint to the United States District Court. This complaint was to command some restraint on the school officials and members of the school district from punishing them. After the first hearing, the district court decided to dismiss the complaint. The district court saw that as the petitioners wore the black armbands, they were simply expressing their views, which is a type of symbolic act that is protected by the free speech clause of the First Amendment. With the presented evidence in court and the court's independent examination of the school records, they found no evidence that the school authorities had a good enough reason to think that wearing black armbands interfered with any schoolwork or activities. It was proven that the petitioners did nothing that disrupted the school. They simply wore the black armbands as they went about with their regular school days. Finally, on February 24, 1969, the Supreme Court ruled a landmark decision stating that the students had the right to wear black armbands to show their protest of the Vietnam War. One of the court case participants, Mary Beth Tinker, didn't stop after the decision was made. She turned out to be an advocate for the various rights of youth in many areas of health and education. Not only that, she decided to go on a Tinker Tour, which in fact is a bus tour around the country where she promotes youth voices and free speech, but at the same time, she has the opportunity to educate many young individuals worldwide about the rights they have.
The Supreme Court agreed that students in public schools and teachers do not leave their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse gates.